Hello friends, Adam here with FED. Before we get started with today's video, I want to give a shout out to the stream that'll be happening later today. At 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, we will be playing Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn Chat Sabotage. We'll be continuing our run where I'm forced to use units like Meg and Fiona while I'm not allowed to use awesome units like Har, Titania, and Soth. So make sure to be there and have some fun. So I just had a playlist of music going the other day, just different video game music, and one of the songs that popped up was The Edge of Dawn, which is sort of the main theme of Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's the song that plays during the opening cutscene sequence, and also there's an extended version of it that you can find for the Seasons of Warfare. And it is just, honestly, it's a really fun song, really upbeat and bopping. It's just kind of fun to listen to. But I started to listen to the lyrics closer than I usually do, and I decided to look them up, and holy cow, Edelgard is straight up the main character of Fire Emblem Three Houses. Now, I know that you could argue that Byleth is, and that obviously the game wants Byleth to be the main character, and I get that, but I more mean when I say main character that Edelgard is the main actor in all of Fodlan. Without her, pretty much nothing would have happened. It actually reminds me a lot of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where Thanos was this looming threat, and eventually in Infinity War, he was basically the main character. That was his movie. Sure, there were heroes like Iron Man and Captain America and the Guardians of the Galaxy, whoever else that were around, but Thanos was the preeminent and predominant character in the show. And I think Edelgard fits much the same way into the story of Three Houses, regardless of which route you choose. Without Edelgard acting and doing what she feels is right, literally nothing would happen in Fodlan. Nothing would change. She is like the cog that turns and then like activates the machine that is the story of Part 2 in Three Houses. And without that action, we would get some interesting results that I kind of want to talk about. And these are just the major ones. There's so many more that you could probably think of on like a character by character basis. Like certain characters not being as fulfilled as they could have been, or maybe some characters would be happier than they otherwise would have been. I think of like Ignatz probably would have pursued painting or something, and I don't know, would have probably felt fulfilled that way, and maybe Lorenz would have been a great governor / leader of Gloucester, like all this different stuff that I don't really have a full grasp on, can't really get into. But I want to talk about bigger plot points that would definitely be affected if Edelgard wasn't in the story, or she just gave up and didn't want to act to change things. So if Edelgard didn't act, Twisted, or those who slither in the dark, would still be at large. I know in Crimson Flower specifically, you don't ever fight them. Also in Azure Moon, you don't ever fight them head on, but it's implied that after the story that they're taken care of, which is kind of silly. I don't see why in Crimson Flower they didn't just have a few extra chapters where you fight the Agarthans and whatever else and take them down. But nevertheless, it's said in the epilogue that she does. And with them at large, they would continue experiments on Crest bearers, which is just like torturing poor innocent children like Edelgard's siblings, Lysithea, and probably her family, just stuff like that to keep them, it would allow them to keep doing those, which is just horrendous. And also, you gotta remember the arrows of light that they just can rain down on people and kill people with. They could totally just use those as weapons of terror, unabashedly unashamed, not unashamed, but unimpeded, without the action of and the militarization of Fodlan after the actions of Edelgard. Next, we have Raya, who would continue to be a looming threat. We see how dangerous Raya can be because she is aggravated and set off by the actions of Edelgard, where she straight up orders Byleth to kill her, regardless of her status as a student or as even just kind of a person. I don't know, it's pretty messed up stuff. And on top of that, I feel like Raya would continue to manipulate people behind the scenes. She would continue to attempt to resurrect Sothis, which is just a horrible thing altogether. The way that's like, I don't think that's any better than what those who slither in the dark do, essentially doing these major surgeries and experiments on small children, as she did with Byleth, you know, putting a literal crest stone, which is like the heart of Sothis, like in his chest, like as like almost like a replacement heart, so it's like a surrogate body for Sothis, and all she wants is like her to have her mother back, essentially, which is totally messed up. And when she eventually goes berserk, which I imagine will happen regardless of what route you play, eventually, for some reason in Silver Snow it happens sooner than others, but I imagine she would eventually go berserk and, you know, enter her Immaculate One form and just terrorize places. Fodlan would be less prepared overall because, again, I don't think it would be as militarized or as just wouldn't have the heroes it needed if Edelgard didn't act the way she did. Like, for instance, I don't think Byleth would be in a position to take down the Immaculate One and other characters. Now to like Dimitri, I think Dimitri would potentially end up being a tyrant ruler. See, the actions of Edelgard essentially caused Dimitri to snap due to all that happening, and then also just like all the different stuff in his past with Duscar and everything. And I think he still would eventually snap due to some other fighting or war or betrayal that would make him become Azure Moon Dimitri, essentially, you know, eye patch guy. And I think that happening later would be bad because it would cause him to be a bloodthirsty king. It would cause him to be a warmonger in a sense, and that is a bad. For those of you who do not know, that is a bad. It is bad for a king to want to kill people because they basically can just do that whenever they want. Next we have Claude. Claude's an interesting case because honestly, he's probably the one who changes the least throughout the entirety of Three Houses. I think the biggest change he gets, if you pick Verdant Wind or you pick the Golden Deer, is he becomes slightly more trusting of like Byleth and people in general. But overall, I think he still would just be kind of a schemy, conniving dude, and I don't think Edelgard really changed that a whole lot. So I think even he would have, but apart from his personality and whatever else, I think he would have made attempts, or maybe he even would have united Lester and Elmira to some extent, but I think that would lead to a war regardless. Just shifting powers creates unease in any continent or world, and who's to say Adrestia or Fargus wouldn't want to like quell any extra power they might have, and then you see maybe Adrestia teaming up with Bridget and stuff like that to maybe fight them. I don't know. I'm not like some expert on these political workings and happenings, but I could see that happening in a story, in a fantasy setting, regardless. Okay, and last but not least, Crest would still be the end-all be-all of status. Now, I don't think this is touched on enough in Three Houses, but that is obviously, like, from the first trailers, we know that that's, like, one of Edelgard's biggest motivations. You know, the Crest Star to Blame teacher, all that stuff. And we see with other characters like Sylvain, where he is so worried about the way people see him just because he has a crest. He's afraid people don't see him the way he is, rather they just want to be with him, and because he is of this immaculate lineage that has this bloodline of amazingness and whatever. So Crest would still just be that. It would still be this Omega status symbol that it is from the beginning. And again, that's also plays into Raya would still be manipulating people behind the scenes and making Crest a big deal. Now, that's just all the things that I just kind of thought of off the top of my head and jotted down before talking here. But I'm interested what you guys have to think. Or maybe you think my ideas are completely stupid and wrong. I don't know. Maybe everything would have changed if Edelgard didn't do anything. Or maybe someone else would have stepped up and changed the world. Maybe Claude would have taken a more violent approach to seeing the changes he wanted to happen. Or maybe even Dimitri would have noticed something. Or who knows, maybe some other smaller character like Sylvain would have said, okay, this is dumb. Maybe then convinces Dimitri to go like all-out war against other places or the church or whatever else. But again, these are just like spitballing just those thoughts, but all of it to illustrate that Edelgard is so important to the story of Three Houses, and I think that in a lot of instances she could be considered the most important character in the game, if not the like main character, the main actor. But again, those are my thoughts. Let me know why I'm wrong, and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you next time.